summer I turned 17, I took a job house-sitting for a family friend who lived on a remote property outside Galesburg, Illinois. The house was a creaky two-story farmhouse surrounded by endless cornfields, stretching for miles without a neighbor in sight. I was supposed to stay there for 10 days, water the plants, feed the cat, and collect the mail. I thought it would be peaceful. Boring, maybe, but peaceful. The air was thick with humidity, the kind that made your skin feel sticky the moment you stepped outside. Every night I fell asleep to the chorus of cicadas and the occasional hoot of an owl. On the third night, I went to bed later than usual, leaving the window cracked open for air. My room faced the cornfield, and the wind rustled the stalks like waves on a black ocean. At around 1:30 a.m., I was pulled from sleep by a strange sound. At first, I thought it was the cat. Then I heard it again, a whisper, low, rasping, almost croaking. "Can I come in?" My eyes shot open. I sat up in bed, heart hammering, unsure if I was still dreaming. The whisper came again, this time closer, just outside the window. "Can I come in?" I crawled to the window and looked out into the cornfield. For a few seconds, I saw nothing but darkness and the wind tossing the stalks. Then, movement. A figure, tall and still, standing just beyond the first row, too tall. I slammed the window shut and backed away. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. I stayed in the living room with every light on, watching the door, clutching the phone. At dawn, I checked outside, and that's when I saw them. Footprints, bare, large, pressed deep into the dirt right under my window, as if someone had stood there for hours. The next morning, I convinced myself it was just a nightmare. Maybe a sleep paralysis hallucination, maybe my brain playing tricks on me. I didn't call the police. What would I even say? That someone whispered from the cornfield and left barefoot prints outside my window? Still, I couldn't ignore the unease creeping into my chest. That night, I made sure every window and door was locked tight. I turned on the porch light, double-checked the back entrance, and left the cat inside. Still, when I lay down to sleep, my eyes stayed open, listening, watching the ceiling, waiting for something. It was quiet until almost 2 a.m. Then I heard it again, not from outside this time, but from the kitchen. A soft creak, then another. I froze. My bedroom was at the back of the house, and the kitchen was straight down the hallway. I sat up, barely breathing, and listened. Another creak. Then the gentle sound of something brushing across the hardwood floor. Not heavy, not light, deliberate. I grabbed my phone and crept out of bed, tiptoeing across the room. The hallway was black, except for a faint glow from the front porch light leaking in through the blinds. I stood at the edge of the hallway, straining my eyes. That's when I saw it. A silhouette. Tall, thin, just standing at the end of the corridor. It wasn't moving. Its shoulders were hunched slightly, arms at its sides, head tilted toward me like it was studying me in the dark. I whispered, "Who's there?" It didn't answer. It just kept standing there, watching. I backed slowly into my room, heart pounding in my throat, and shut the door quietly. I locked it, braced a chair under the knob, and pressed my back against the wall. Then came the knock. 3 soft taps, measured, right at the center of my door. And then, silence. I didn't sleep. I didn't even move. I sat on the floor with the chair wedged tight under the doorknob, phone in my hands, trying to call 911 again. Nothing. Just a flat tone. The screen said no service. The knock never came again, but I could hear something outside my door. Breathing. Not loud, but rhythmic. Human. Like someone standing there for minutes, waiting. Then it stopped, and silence settled over everything like a blanket. I stayed frozen until the first light of dawn started to stretch across the floor through the blinds. The sun broke over the cornfield, and birds began to chirp like nothing had happened. I finally got up, shaking, and opened the door. Nothing was in the hallway. No footprints, no sound. I checked every room, every window, every door, all locked, nothing disturbed, except the back door. It was wide open. Again, I stepped outside, the grass wet beneath my feet, and looked toward the cornfield. The wind was moving gently through the stalks. It looked peaceful, but I could feel something just beyond the rows. Like eyes. Like presence. I turned to go back inside. That's when I saw it. In the dirt, leading from the back door to the edge of the field, a line of bare footprints. Large. Deep. As if someone had walked calmly from the house into the corn. Only, there were no return tracks. As if it hadn't come from the cornfield. It had come out of the... I packed that morning. I left a note for the homeowners, locked every door I could, and got in my car without even feeding the cat. I couldn't explain it, not even to myself. Something had been in that house. Something had walked its floors, watched me sleep, waited for the right moment to step into view. I drove back to town and stayed with my cousin. When the family returned 2 days later, they called to thank me and ask how it went. I said nothing, just handed them the key and told them the back door needs a better lock. I tried to forget it, I really did. But a week after I got home, a package showed up on my porch, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo, a picture of the farmhouse, taken from the cornfield. Through the stalks, you could see the second-story window of my room with the curtain slightly open. And behind the glass, something, a figure, tall, watching. I turned the photo over. Written in black marker on the back were 4 words. Can I come in? That night, I dreamed I was still in that bed, window open, wind blowing. The whisper came again. Only this time, it wasn't outside. It was from inside the room, right next to my ear. Every summer, my dad and I would take a short camping trip, just the 2 of us. It was a tradition. We'd pick some random state park within driving distance, set up a tent, roast hot dogs, and try to disconnect from everything. In 2019, we picked a small lakeside campground deep in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. Nothing fancy, just some spaced-out lots in the woods, a fire ring, and a shared latrine. The park ranger who checked us in was this leathery, quiet guy in his 60s. He asked what site we were on. Lot 11, my dad said. The ranger paused. You sure? Dad nodded. The ranger just muttered something like, haven't had anyone camp there in a while, and handed over our tag. Lot 11 was the furthest one out, right along the tree line that bordered the lake. It was beautiful, private, quiet, and shaded. Dad loved it. Said it was perfectly disconnected. The first night went fine. We grilled food, told stories by the fire, and listened to the loons out on the water. But around 3 a.m., I woke up to something odd. At first I thought it was just wind or an animal, but then I realized it wasn't either. It was humming, low and broken, a female voice singing a lullaby off-key. It came from somewhere just outside the tent. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the canvas wall, heart racing. The humming drifted back into silence. In the morning, I asked my dad if he'd heard anything weird. He just shook his head and said I probably dreamed it. But that second night, that's when it got worse. That second night, my dad fell asleep early. He snored softly in his sleeping bag, a flashlight still dimly glowing near his feet. I stayed awake, listening to the forest. It was too quiet. Even the loons had stopped calling. Around midnight, I stepped out of the tent to use the latrine, taking the flashlight with me. The campground was empty. Ours was the only site in the loop that night. The light beam cut through the trees in sharp, narrow paths. Everything looked still, too still. As I walked back from the latrine, I heard it again. The humming. Same voice. Same tune. But closer this time, I stopped. The light in my hand trembled slightly. I swept it across the trees, searching, and that's when I saw her. A woman standing completely still between 2 birch trees. Pale skin, long tangled hair, and a dress that looked soaked from the waist down. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared. Then her head tilted slowly, like a curious dog. I turned and ran. I tripped once, scraping my knee, but I made it to the tent and dove inside. "Dad!" I shouted. He woke up groggy and irritated, but when he saw my face, he sat up fast. "What happened?" I told him. He grabbed the hatchet from beside his pack and stepped out of the tent, scanning the darkness. Nothing. No woman. No footprints. No voice. Probably just someone walking the shoreline, he said, but I could see it in his eyes. He didn't believe that. Neither did I. We didn't sleep much that night. The next day, he suggested we pack up a night early and head home. I didn't argue. We left just after breakfast. My dad said he'd had a bad feeling, though he didn't elaborate. We loaded the car quickly and drove off without finishing our usual campsite cleanup. About 20 minutes into the drive, he pulled over onto a shoulder without saying a word. I looked over. His hands were shaking on the wheel. "She was at the edge of the site this morning," he said finally, watching from the trees. My mouth went dry. He didn't look at me, just started the car again and kept driving. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. 2 nights after we got home, I woke up around 2 a.m. to that same off-key humming. Not in the forest this time. In our house. My room is on the 2nd floor, window facing the backyard. The air outside was still, no wind, but the humming was coming from outside my window. I crawled out of bed and pulled the curtain back. At first, I didn't see anything. Just the yard, the fence, the garden hose coiled near the porch. But then, just as I was about to let go, I saw movement. From the shadow beneath the maple tree, something stepped forward. A figure. A woman. Same tangled hair. Same dripping dress. And in her hand something dark. I stumbled backward and screamed. My dad burst into the room with a bat, but when we looked outside again, she was gone. No footprints. No sign of anyone. But the window had smudges, like wet palms had pressed against the glass. We called the police. They found nothing. Just damp grass where someone had stood for hours, watching. After that night, my dad installed security lights, motion sensors, even cameras. Nothing ever showed up again. The police wrote it off as a trespasser, maybe someone high, maybe a prank. But we both knew better. Something followed us from that campsite. Something old, something patient. I started researching the area, going through old forums, urban legend sites, anything. I found a thread buried deep in a local history group. One post from 2007 talked about a woman who used to sing to children at the lake. Said she lost her daughter there in 1952, drowned in the shallows. The woman went missing weeks later. They say she walked into the woods in her nightgown and never came out. People claim to hear her humming lullabies on cold nights, especially in the summer, especially near Lot 11. I never told my dad. I just deleted the link and tried to forget. I haven't gone camping since. But sometimes when it rains and the house is quiet, I think I hear it again. That soft, broken lullaby, humming from somewhere just beyond the window. And every so often, I wake up to find the grass wet below the pane. No footprints. Just the smell of pine, and that strange, uneasy silence that never really left. I spent the summer before college working as a night security guard at an apple orchard in upstate New York. The owners were old family, friends, good people, but deeply superstitious. They warned me not to stay too late after midnight and never to go into the lower orchard rows after dark. I laughed it off. It was an orchard, not a graveyard. I was 18, broke, and just happy for a paycheck. The job was simple. Drive around in a golf cart, check locks on the sheds, and make sure no one was stealing fruit or breaking in. Most nights were boring, peaceful even. I'd sit on a folding chair outside the small guard shack, sipping cheap coffee and watching fireflies flicker across the field. But one night late July, I saw something strange. A light down in the trees. Not like a flashlight. It flickered, swayed. A warm, yellow glow, like an old lantern. At first I thought maybe one of the owners was doing a late inspection. But when I radioed the main house, no one answered. The light moved slowly between the rows, sometimes vanishing, sometimes reappearing in a different place entirely. I watched it for nearly 10 minutes. No footsteps, no sound, just the soft rustle of leaves and the occasional crack of a branch underfoot. When it disappeared again, I decided to drive down and check it out. I thought maybe some dumb kids were messing around. I drove slowly, headlights off, creeping between the apple trees. That's when I saw her, standing alone near one of the irrigation barrels, holding the lantern. Her back was to me. Her dress was pale and old-fashioned, like something from a painting. She didn't move, didn't turn, just stood there, still, perfectly still. I tapped the horn. Nothing. Then, the lantern went out. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness. The lantern had gone out so suddenly, as if it had never been there at all. I turned the headlights back on, casting sharp beams between the trees. But the woman was gone. Not a single trace. No footsteps. No rustling leaves. Just rows of trees swaying gently in the warm night air. I got out of the golf cart with my flashlight and started walking toward where she had stood. The ground was soft with fallen apples and damp soil. My light scanned left to right, illuminating nothing but orchard and shadows. Then I heard it, a soft creaking, like a rope swing or an old wooden door, but it came from above me. I looked up and my stomach dropped. Hanging between two apple trees, just above the irrigation barrel, was a noose. An actual rope noose swaying gently in the breeze. There was no branch above it, no support beam, just the rope hanging impossibly from midair. I stepped back, breath caught in my throat, and nearly tripped on something behind me. When I turned, I saw fresh footprints in the mud. Small, bare feet, leading toward the trees. And that's when I noticed the apples. All the ones in that row had fallen. Every single one. Not from animals. They weren't eaten. They were arranged. Neatly. In circles. Concentric, tightening circles around the base of one tree. I didn't wait. I ran back to the golf cart, heart hammering, trying to start the engine. It sputtered. Once. Twice. Then it roared to life. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. The lantern had turned back on, but this time, it wasn't alone. There were two others, slowly moving between the trees. I didn't tell the owners. I figured they wouldn't believe me, or worse, that they already knew. I called in sick the next 2 nights, then finally returned the following Friday for my last scheduled shift. I was determined to stay in the guard shack and not leave until sunrise. I brought a thermos of coffee, a baseball bat, and even a small hand mirror. Don't ask me why, just something about seeing things behind me made me feel better. Midnight came and went. Nothing happened. But around 1:45 a.m., the motion sensor light on the far side of the orchard clicked on. Then the one beyond that. Then the one near the south fence. Something was moving across the property, toward me. I locked the shack door and killed the lights. Then I crouched beneath the small window and listened. Nothing. Until I heard crunching footsteps outside on the gravel. Then tapping. Not at the door. At the back wall. Like fingernails. I held my breath. It circled, slowly. I couldn't see it, but I knew it was there. I felt it. The air was heavy again. Static. Like before a thunderstorm. Then I caught a glimpse, just a shadow sliding past the window. Then another. And another. I risked peeking up. In the distance, 5 lanterns floated between the trees. But no one held them. They hovered, bobbing slightly, casting warped, uneven light. And between the lights, shapes. Vague. Human-sized. Some crouched low, some unnaturally tall. One pressed against the window, a pale face. Eyes entirely black. No irises, no expression, just endless night in its stare. I dropped the mirror and screamed. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe the fear became too much for my body to process. When I opened my eyes, it was morning. Bright, safe, and silent. Birds chirped. A breeze rustled through the orchard. But something was wrong. The shack door was wide open. The baseball bat was gone. And my shoes were sitting neatly outside, as if someone had placed them there. I checked my phone, no messages, no calls. I drove home and never came back. I didn't even pick up my last paycheck. Weeks later, I heard from a friend that the orchard shut down for renovations. No one explained what that meant. I searched online, found nothing recent. But on an old message board for ghost stories in rural New York, I found a thread from 2005. A user described working at a nearby property and seeing strange lights at night, floating lanterns, people in the trees, disappearances. It ended with, "They're not ghosts. Ghosts don't wait. These things wait." That was enough for me. I've never spoken about that summer out loud. Not to my parents, not to friends. But sometimes, on humid nights, when the windows are open and the wind carries the scent of apples, I swear I hear soft crunching footsteps outside. And if I ever catch a flicker of warm yellow light across a field, I close the blinds and turn off the porch light, because whatever it was back there, it remembers me too.